Hey, sports porchers. It's your hockey Jesus with analysis of game 4 of the Stanley Cup Finals 2024. And yes, there will be a game 5. Well, Edmonton really came out to play in game 4. I honestly think that there was a little bit of puck luck going on in that first period. Florida did absolutely come out for the jugular right from the start. They came out charging in the offensive zone. And, if it wasn't in the 17-minute mark of the first period when Kachuk rang it off the pipe and then Reinhardt does the same thing with the rebound, it's a whole nother story. And if you've been listening to me, by the way, thank you. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't. But if you have been, you know that I've been saying this series has been a little bit closer than people realize, just because of some of these small opportunities that Florida had been able to bury. I actually think that the it completely flipped the switch in this game, where Edmonton got the benefit of a post, a pipe, a good save by Skinner, which we'll get into in a second. And Edmonton made the most of their opportunities and put them past Bob. Bob was human for the first time in a fortnight. And I think, really that's the big reason for this 8-1 win by the Edmonton Oilers. Edmonton absolutely deserved every goal they get. And those people who say, oh, I wish they didn't score so many goals, they're not going to have enough for the next game. It doesn't work like that in hockey, people. Hockey Jesus knows that when you're scoring goals, keep going with it. I mean, the momentum factor in hockey is huge. And right now, Edmonton's got all the momentum. They're doing great with it. Let's go over the highlights. In the first period, like I said, there was the pipes that were hit. And then what happens? Connor Brown chips it out of the zone past Verhage on the charge, gets it, basically goes and chases it to himself. And then, he's going down the right side. He gets it to over the Yan mark and he just scores with it. Just, it was really kind of a weird play because Brown could have shot it, but he decided to go around all the slidingness, gets it back into the crease, and Yanmark was smart enough to get to the crease. Barkov came and tried to slide, but he ended up in the net, and so did the puck. And Edmonton fans went wild, 1-0. And once again, that is what you need to do. I actually thought that the penalty kill for Edmonton was due for a shorty. I thought they would get it in game 2, to be honest with you. But they finally got one in game 4. Connor Brown's been playing great. He's an excellent third line center for them. I love the way he plays, and tipping it to himself on that play outside and Verhage missing that puck. And he had the 2-on-1. I thought he just did a great job of being patient and making Montour slide right in the bob on that play. Brilliant play. Score 1-0. And then here it comes. The floodgates didn't really open because this was just an innocent play with about 12-15 left in the first period. Janmark to Henrique. He just made a score. I mean, he just made a play. It was a really long pass. And I tell you what, this is what's going on right now for the Edmonton Oilers. They're able to get these long passes out of the offensive zone, nearly into the defense, into their own. Out of the defensive zone into their own offensive zone, and great play right in front of Lindell for Henrique to get a stick on it, and it was a score, 2-0. And then here's the deal: Forsling gets the next one and just shoots it on goal, and Tarasenko tips it in, and it's 2-1. And suddenly, I know it's 2-1, but I can promise you that everybody in Edmonton was like, here we go again. 2-goal lead. We're getting excited, and here comes Florida. And what you know, that happens at about the 8:40 mark in the first period. Not even 30 seconds later, about a minute later, 7:50 left in the game. Bennett, here he comes, a 2-on-1. You got Nurse back. He gets it past Nurse. He gets it over the Verhage. Verhage shoots, and instead of he shoots and scores, he shoots and Skinner makes the save. And that right there, put an asterisk by that. If if Edmonton makes a run. That right there was the catalyst for good things for Edmonton. Once they saw that Skinner could get to that save, um, wasn't more than a few minutes later, Draisaitl gets once again a long pass at the blue line, got past Ekblad. He's in. He's in Forsling's back. Now, they still got a chance to make a defensive play, but Holloway just comes barreling down, and boom, it's in the back of the net, and it goes up 3-1. So instead of at the end of that period it being 2-2 and Florida with probably a little bit of momentum, nope, 3-1 Edmonton with all the momentum. And just like Florida did to Edmonton in game 3, Edmonton gave it back to them in game 4, and they just stomped the pedal and they just took over this game. Bouchard, once again, a long pass up the middle, 4-1. McDavid gets his first. He was flying on that play. You could tell he wanted that goal. Celebration was, come on, Connor, your first Stanley Cup final goal. Let's get excited about it. 4-1 anyways. And here's the deal with that one. Hit the post and didn't come out. Hit the post and went in. Edmonton's been getting a lot of puck luck, and good for them. You make your own puck luck. I don't believe that it's luck. I believe it's skill is the reason you hit that post and it goes in. McDavid showed it with his first goal. Ekholm, gets another one along past the Holloway to Draisaitl. Boom. In the back of the net. Ekman Larson was back. Oh, and that's what happened. Actually, that was at 15:05, Mark. I am a mess right now. I apologize. McDavid, with speed, takes on the ozone. He drops it to Nurse, and he scores it. That was the Nurse goal. What I was talking about was on the power play when Ekholm made a long pass to Holloway to Draisaitl. Draisaitl shot it, and Bob had probably his only save of the game. That happened just before then, and then Nurse scored after that with McDavid. McDavid hits the post. No big deal. Then they get the two-man advantage. And finally, the Edmonton Oilers score on a power play. I know, Florida's all nuts over the two guys being in the penalty box with Bennett and Tkachuk being in the penalty box. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins gets the rebound. It's 6-1 at that point. They score two more goals. Hollowell scored from Perry and McDavid. And honestly, that was with 6 minutes left in the game. The third period was a snooze fest, which is exactly what you want with Edmonton. Except for the fans, by the way. Fans were just going nuts the whole third period. Good for you, Edmonton. Stick with your team. You never know what can happen. And 8-1, McLeod gets basically picks up the garbage there that was left on the block shot, slapped it in, and it was over. Bob got pulled, by the way, with 5 goals scored. That's enough for Bob. He didn't need to be in there anymore. He had a rough night, and that's basically what Maurice said. My number with Bob is 5 goals. When he sees 5 goals, he sees enough, and that was it. 8-1 was the final. Let's look at the stats. The stats really weren't too telling. Although Florida did outshoot Edmonton in that first period, that's how you know you're going good, Edmonton. You're taking the 3-1 lead, even though Florida outshot you 14-10. And honestly, only 4 shots for Florida in the second period. They rolled over and died. 17 for Edmonton in that second period, and it was flip-flopped in the third, 15-8. But Florida had 10 of those 15 shots on power play opportunities in the third, which they could not. They really didn't even have really good opportunity the whole time. Love the way that Edmonton penalty kill is still keeping it together. And let's talk about the good and the bad. First, let's talk about the bad for Florida. My goodness, where does it begin? Ekblad had an awful night, -4. Bennett, Tkachuk, and Verhaeghe all -3. And even Barkov was a -2, which is rare. I'm wondering if Barkov still isn't feeling the effects of that hit. He looked fine to me, like he was out there, but he didn't look like he played as a unit, as a team when he was out on the ice. Maybe, once again, it just could have been the jitters of the cup being in the building. It's there to be delivered to Florida if they win. And if not, it goes back in a case and it flies its way to Florida for Tuesday night. And that's what's going to happen. Clearly the bad for Florida. Bob, a .688 save percentage, only 11 saves on 16 shots. Look, I'm not going to fault Bob for this loss. I still think he's the Conn-Smythe uh, lead runner here. With maybe actually a nod to McDavid. I hate to say that out loud. I don't think they'll give it to McDavid if they lose. Um, but I think Bob couldn't have been that much better. There were just a lot of jailbreaks. And the one thing that Florida is going to have to do to get into the good column for next time, they have to take away that stretch pass. That is just the thing that gets Edmonton going. When they get that stretch pass and they can get behind the defense, then McDavid can use his speed to catch up. Oh my goodness, that is a killer for the Florida. They can't skate with McDavid. It's the one thing that they can't do. But what they can do as a team, corral them so that they're not getting that stretch pass one, and they're not getting McDavid speed two up the middle. That's a deadly combination to beat Florida. And if Edmonton can still play loose, they're playing a little loose now because when you're down 3-0, it's only happened once ever where a team's come back from 3-0. And I think Edmonton's just playing loose. Let's go to the good and the bad for Edmonton. Clearly, the good for Edmonton was Skinner, 970 save percentage, stopped 32 of 33 shots. They got their stretch pass game going. And honestly, I think their defense played much better as a team. If you look at some of the opportunities that could have happened, like on 2-on-1 breaks, there was one in particular, I think it was in the first, it might have been in the second, where Cody Ceci gets his stick on a pass and it just flies out of the way. And it really could have been a really good opportunity. I'm pretty sure it was in the first, and it just squashed it. And that's the thing. When you have momentum, it's the small things like that really make a big difference. And it's the small things like that can really just bury a team. And you saw tonight, 8-0, 8-1 tonight was the final. Let's talk about something that Paul Maurice said. Paul Maurice definitely acknowledged the stretch rush by the Oil, but he said probably the most important thing. And if you're a Florida fan and you're listening to this, hold solace in this because they got the split. I mean, they went up to Edmonton to get the split. Now, coming back after losing an 8-1 game, you have to remember you obtained your goal. Your goal was to get 1 out of 2 games there, not to come back tied up, and you got 3-1, and you're playing for the Stanley Cup Finals on your home ice. I think that's absolutely very smart coaching by Paul Maurice. And he said, we either win or we learn. And they have to learn from that. And I think what they have to learn from it is they have to take away the stretch pass, which leads to the rush for Edmonton. They got to get back to frustrating them. And I think they're going to be fine, to be completely transparent with you. Let's talk about a few tidbits before I wrap this up. And here are the tidbits. The last 4 periods, Edmonton has outscored Florida 10-1. That's pretty important because Florida really prides themselves on being a third period team, and they've been outscored 4-0 in the last 2 third periods. Florida's got to find a way to get that back. And really, the way to get it back is just by playing that team game again. They got to stop thinking about getting their names on that cup and start thinking about how to stop that Edmonton rush. Hey, Connor McDavid's got up to 7 points in the finals. I told you that I thought they would lose. He'd get an assist and he would tie Gretzky. He just zoomed past Gretzky's first Stanley Cup Finals. Gretzky only had 4 points and 4 assists. McDavid's up to 7 points now, and he got a goal too. So good for him. He leads all scorers with 38 points in all of these playoffs. It's the biggest. Point total. I think since Gretzky did it. But he's never going to be able to break the record this year. Well, that's not true. He could get 47 points. He could get 9 more points if this goes to a 7-game series. But Wayno did it back in 84, 85 in 18 games. So although he might break the overall points record, by the way, he's got 6 points to catch Lemieux. Lemieux's second on that list. With 44 points. He had to do it in 23 games. So if somehow Connor McDavid has another 6-point night, he could tie Mario Lemieux as second amount of points in the playoffs. That would be pretty interesting. And even though 8-1 sounds like a really great game and maybe the most interesting game in Edmonton finals history. That's not true. Let me tell you about the 1987-1988 Edmonton Boston series, where Game 4 was actually suspended. That's right. You may have remembered it. I was actually in high school at the time, so I don't quite remember this game, but maybe if you're slightly older than the hockey Jesus, yeah, there are people out there that are older than the hockey Jesus. You might have remembered that the game was tied 3-3 in the second period when there was an absolute power failure in the Boston Garden. They had to suspend the game, which means they wiped out all the statistics and everything that was played for that game. Edmonton was up 3-0 in the series at the time. And they said, well, we'll go back and replay game 6 if we need to as a game 7. And as it turns out, the Edmonton Oilers won the cup the very next night. Well, the next time they played, I'm sure there was a night off. And Edmonton raised the cup that year. So unfortunately, it was an A1 win for Edmonton, but not the most interesting game 4 in Edmonton Stanley Cup final history. Hey, we got another game. Game 5. I'm thrilled that we get another game. Tuesday night, 8 o'clock. Hey, we haven't seen an overtime game yet. Maybe we'll get to see an overtime game yet. That certainly would up the ante, wouldn't it? Maybe Edmonton can keep this going. I say, whatever it takes, go get it. Go grab the cup, Florida. Keep it there in Florida or Edmonton. Hey, win another one, and the pressure starts to build to the Florida Panthers. So let's see what happens. See you after Game 5 Tuesday night.